Hi there, this is Dr. Mark Sehl from the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart. I'm trying again to make this video happen again because I did one and I just tried to put it on YouTube and it said it was rejected for some reason. Some things happen, you just have to keep doing them, right? So I'm going to do this one over again, but this is Independence Day. And Independence has a lot of reverberations with me and making this YouTube channel since 2012. And supporting groups who were disempowered, disenfranchised, starting with Occupy Wall Street. I used to go down there and take videos. People who were, one man comes to mind from Philly, and he was complaining about his local town in the area, 35% unemployment, and an African American person who spoke to me about he was concerned about his grandchildren because what future did they have living in this world? So it was very important to me, and I come from a working class background, and so I identify with a lot of these people who are struggling, and that's what I identify with in a lot of different things in the YouTube channel. The Occupy Wall Street, new musicians. I used to be a musician and a musician, and I used to play trumpet, and I know what it's like to be trying to find a way in music, and particularly in a city which sort of doesn't want you to play in the public. So they fought for their rights to play. They really did, and I'd like to take videos of them because it's like 170 videos of street musicians and subway musicians playing in the subway, and they're great. They're really terrific. So it's supporting the disenfranchised people, LGBT marches up there, indigenous people marches when they marched down in a village, and they were identifying with the people who were in Canada at the time. So, and also artists and theater people. There was a wonderful play, Smoke, which I identified very much with. It was by the indigenous people, and so that met some of the actors. They took a liking to me, as much as you can know somebody in a short period of time. So we went out one night and down this club down on Canal Street, a rip-roaring place, and they knew people there, and all the drinks were free. So I had a good time. And Tanis Parento was an actor there, and I did a number of interviews with her in terms of her being acting in that play, because she always was an indigenous person from the Cree Nation. So, so Therapy for the Heart, and it's about the role of emotions in our lives, and that's what therapy is all about, trying to find how our emotions help us and don't help us in navigating through all the stressful times. And some people come to therapy for a lot of different reasons. I told there's one student that I was very much admiring in social work school, and she wanted to go to therapy because she just wanted to change, and I admired her, so I wanted to change too, and because I liked her character. People don't come in for characterological change often. They might come in for depression and a little blip in their life, maybe a breakup in a relationship, or the loss of someone very important to them, and they're grieving. So they and then they may stay for a while and see maybe the depression has been around for a long time, maybe all their life sometimes, but it's like a stream that runs on an undercurrent. It's not too detectable because it's just there. It doesn't affect your functioning only when stressful things like a loss of a person happens. But then sometimes they stay. They stay because they come in for instance, a relationship that they had that didn't go very well for them. And as they talk about their relationships and they tell me the story of their life, then they find out that they have not really been able to give themselves a very loving relationship. So that's been consistent. So then the question is, well, how come? I mean, if somebody wants love, why don't they find it? And, it's a complicated question, but often it has to do with the familiarity of not being loved the familiarity of being abused, the familiarity of not being held. And it's like my mom, she had a tough life. She was, her mother died when she was 2 from childbirth of her sister, and then when she was 8, the stepmother who her father married, she died, but she was very, very not very affectionate. I guess a natural mother was to an extent, but not the stepmother. And then after that, their father wrote them a letter saying he was going to leave. Imagine that, a letter. I have the letter, so he did come back eventually, but he was a sorry state of affairs. But see, that was desertion throughout. And then he put them in a convent so that they would take care of them. Yeah, well, they got a roof over their head and meals, but I'm not so sure how they. And my mother never graduated from high school. I think she was a wonderful human being, like a porcupine, and she had an alcoholic problem, and she was in Pilgrim State before I was born, a year before I was born. So she had, she tried to commit suicide when she was 18. Yeah, so, and I'm not gonna. I'll go into that later, maybe in a different venue. But why she did kill herself at that time was horrendous. The reason. So back again to the Independence Day. And my mother was she really spoke up and spoke out, but she had a lot of problems. She went to AA. Fortunately for me, she saved my life by getting sober at 8. But my house was a shambles. There was so much shame because of the drinking where I lived, and so getting therapy when I was in my early 20s really helped me. Straighten that stuff out. And it takes a long time because you don't do this in quick fixes. People have inherently long-standing problems, and they need to pay attention to them, just like you'd pay attention to anything else that's important to your life. What else is there before rather than your own self-confidence and self-belief in yourself? If you don't believe in yourself, and you're not going to have any kind of external thing that's going to reassure you about that, because you could always lose them. You could lose a relationship, you could lose your money, you could lose a friend, you could lose a house, whatever. So if you have confidence and self-assurance and good, powerful, strong self-esteem, you can make it in life much easier than not having that. So that's what therapy is really helping you to build. So it helped me. My first therapist, who was the therapist of that young woman, his name was Leo Ratner, and he was an Adlerian. He was a funny guy. He's not a funny guy. He was a good guy. What's a good guy? He just was a decent person. He was into groups, and I joined a group. And the Adlerians like to focus on socialization, so that's what the purpose of the group was, and that was a very good experience for me. I've never been in a group before where you talk about, things, social things, your relationships, whatever. It was an interesting group because there was a rabbi in the group, and that's unusual too. He used to hang out with me at night in the village, and he didn't live in the village. He lived in Williamsburg, but he would take off. He had an apartment in Williamsburg, and this is secret place, and we would go out to bars, and he would tuck his payas under his hat, and we'd have a good time. So that was a lot of fun too. Always remember him, and Leo, it was good, but he had little quirks. Like he would have a wind-up clock in the drawer, and that would go off in 45 minutes, and that was the end of my session. And he also had an accountant that said, "Oh, by the way, I have to raise your fee because my accountant tells me I have to do." So he didn't take responsibility for his difficult things that he had to bring up with his patients. I think he had a problem with aggression, dealing with it. But he helped me a lot in certain ways. And I wanted to be an analyst and lie down on the couch and see what that was like. So he said, "Well, I'd like to accommodate you, but I don't have a couch in my office. But I do have a couch in the group room." So we went in there and tried that for a while. And so I left him eventually because of those two things. But then I went to an analyst that was named Margaret Ray, and she was very wonderful. The thing with being in therapy is that you always have insecurity that you project into the therapist. So my insecurity was I didn't think she liked me. I couldn't tell whether or not she liked me. So a few years down into therapy, all of a sudden she had a smile on her face when she greeted me, and that I didn't change. I did change. She didn't change. So I didn't see her smile because something in me changed, that I could feel more likable, loving, lovable. Not wholly. I mean, I think that, to me, it looks, for years, it took a long time for me to have that solid base of foundation. And I still question it from time to time, but I am pretty confident pretty much now. But it took a long time, and therapy takes a long time because we have so many horrific events in our life, at least some of us do. And so you work on something a little bit, and then it kind of goes underground. You work on it a different way, and you have another memory, and then something else crops up, and you put things together in terms of your life, and you keep working at things. So I hope you can also do that for yourselves. Independence, we need to be able to be strong, and we have insecure attachments, like I did with my mom. She had insecure attachments, obviously, right, with her mother. Two mothers who were dying, and her father that sent them away, and I had them with the alcoholism in my family. I felt like I was very ashamed of my existence there, and I never brought anyone into my house for 21 years. There were two houses, one on North Pearl Street and one on Mercer Street. That was my aunt's house, my father's sister. So I would go up there in the summertime, and it was a normal life, but it was more normal. Backyard, front lawn, I had friends there. No friends down in Pearl Street. It was a very poor neighborhood. And anyway, I think I've told this story before, but I struggled with that, and I kept at it and built my self-confidence, and I got rid of shame. The one way you get rid of shame is to name it. It's to name what you're ashamed of. Many people don't when they're having problems. They are so ashamed. They don't want to talk about them, and especially in families. My parents never talked about their problems. They would fight like mad, and I would be terrified at night, but they didn't talk to me about it. They didn't say, by the way, Mark, how is this affecting you, our fighting? What a wonderful question that would have been. Ask your kids that, by the way, sometimes if you have a feeling you're fighting a lot. But I was very, very, very scared. But, again, therapy had helped me. I met this wonderful analyst, Margaret Ray. She's a psychoanalyst, so I got my psychoanalyst person to be with me as a training me while I did my control work at this place called IPTAR, the Institute for Psychoanalytic Training and Research. So she was good. She was classical, but not classical in the terribly rigid sense. Like, for instance, I gave her two figurines of cats, and as an expression of my gratitude for helping me so much, and she took them, put them on our bookshelf right next to the chair where I sat, and didn't say anything. She didn't analyze it. That would have been the worst thing to do, to say, why did I want to give that to her? What was my motive, etc. So she was really good, with the exception of the hug that wasn't a hug. So I had to leave therapy because I wasn't financially equipped to stay in it for a while. So I left. After leaving, I found out how angry I was at her, so I went back into therapy because of that. I didn't want to keep that anger locked away, and so I told her when I went the next time, we talked about the hug, and she said, well, I didn't, she initiated it, but she denied it, so that pissed me off. I really felt that was coming from her. It was like Jane. Jane said, what you did, it came from you. The case of Jane, I talk about here, and also is on the podcast. It's a long history, wonderful story. That's the story that I wrote the paper, Stalemates in Therapy and the Notion of Gratification about. But so she just said, no, you initiated it, so that was it. I mean, we can agree to disagree, but I was so mad one time when I went in to talk to her. I was angry as all hell, and I said, I don't want to lie down on this couch. I'm not lying down today. I'm just not doing it. Oh, nobody had a gun to me in my head and said I had to, right? I was pissed off. And I was so pissed off, I thought I was going to throw her right through the window. She said one thing to me. She said, I don't care enough about you. And that was it. That was it. I wanted from her what I didn't get, from my mom and pop. So, very good interpretation. And it held me for a while, but I had a lot of things to work out, and that feeling of not being cared about was with me always, because my mother she didn't show up one time at the office, and I was waiting for her. I was 7 years old, and she never showed. She didn't show for 3 days. And that locked into me, and I never even knew what impact that had on me, what imprint it had on my life and my memories. I only found out later on, years, and that's what happens with things. You just can't go and read a self-help book, or somebody tell you, oh, well, you have desertion anxiety. You don't feel like you're lovable because your mother left you. No, it doesn't work that way. These are inside us. They are beliefs that we're not lovable, and you can't accept them because they're too painful. How could I accept the thought that my mother didn't love me, and that's why she didn't come to work, because I wasn't lovable? That was very painful. So finally, I became aware of those emotions in a long time. So that's why I'm encouraging you to hang in there if you're in therapy, and don't drop out because you're having a rough time. There's a lot of things to find out about yourself. As we talked about, there are things in the unconscious we don't know about. They're just there. And we'll find it given time, but it's a painful process sometimes, and you have to endure it. And you learn to tolerate the feelings that you never could tolerate, and the memories that you never could tolerate. But you can't do it right away. You're a fragile human being. You have vulnerabilities. You have defenses that you have to maintain. You have to keep them up until you're ready to take them down. So, there's two compelling things that we have, and framed in my videos and also the podcast. It's a joy to be hidden and disaster not to be found. So we want to be hide. We need to be hide, and don't let any therapist tell you otherwise, provoke you into saying things when you're not ready, or to encourage you to when you're not ready. But also we need to be discovered, and we have an authentic part of ourselves that is there waiting to be open-hearted about, but you need the right person to talk to. So on Independence Day, all the YouTube channels, everything is about independence, really, and trying to have a self that's very confident enough so you're not so concerned about what people think about you. It's what you think about yourself. If you have that, you got a lot. So I'm going to sign off for now. If you have any questions, and if you think that these videos, by the way, are repetitive anyway, let me know. I don't know if they are or not, but let me know. And email me at marksehl@gmail.com, or text me at 917-991-9113. Texts don't bother me, so don't worry about that. But be in touch. All right, so I'm going to sign off for now. This is Mark Sehl, Independence Day. Bye-bye.